All right, so want to talk a little bit about a question that we receive quite frequently here at Tower Genius from property owners and just from people in general. So is 5G the cell tower killer that some people are saying it's going to be? And the answer to that is no, it's not. I mean, there's always going. I mean, you have a smartphone, right? You have a cell phone, and the needs for coverage capacity are just increasing, right? So they're always going to need to deliver that that bandwidth somehow, right? So there's always a need for cell towers, regardless if it's 5G or in a few years when it's 6G or whatever the next generation of technology is that we're using. Yes, so the satellites, the Starlink and these other sat phone, these low orbit cell sites that are orbiting, satellite cell sites that are orbiting, those are awesome. Actually, it's just a great technology. I'm sure the people at Iridium, the sat phone company, they're not thrilled about the Starlink and some of these other startups that are out there, but people can't afford a regular sat phone. Like, not everybody is like Jack Bauer where they can afford to have one of these things. I'm probably dating myself here, but if you're on a cruise ship or you're on a fishing vessel or you're working in the the oil fields up in Canada or Alaska, you don't have coverage. So what do you have? You have one of these Iridium sat phones, and they cost the companies a lot of money. And normal, average, everyday consumers aren't going to spend that much money for one of these phones. Companies like T-Mobile, who not very fond of them, but this deal that they did with Starlink with Elon Musk is going to allow anybody with a T-Mobile device. You don't have to upgrade your phone. So if you have a T-Mobile phone, in about 6 months or so, you should be able to use and connect to the Starlink network, which is basically your phone is going to be a sat phone. So that doesn't mean if you're in New York City or you're out in Long Island or New Jersey or California, out in Los Angeles, that anywhere in the country in a populated area where there's cell towers, you're not going to connect to the Starlink network. That's only if you're out in the bush, right? If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're out in somewhere out in the Idaho wilderness, or you're out in the middle of Wyoming where there's no towers for 20, 30 miles in any direction, or you're in Alaska or somewhere remote like that. You're down in the jungles of of Hawaii somewhere, and there's no towers. As long as you can see the sky with your phone, you'll be able to connect to one of these satellite connections that they'll have through Starlink and T-Mobile. So that's really cool. But that won't eliminate cell towers. So there's in a Starlink coverage area, so it's a lot larger than what a cell site would cover. They can carry, I believe it's like 1,000 calls at once and whatever. So this is not for like downloading your, watching all kinds of stuff on YouTube. This is for basic communication, basic texting. But this technology is great because if you're in a remote area and you need to make a phone call, well, you're not stranded, right? You can actually communicate. So that won't eliminate cell towers. These things will work in conjunction with the existing carrier networks, right? So the real danger for landlords, cell site landlords with 5G, getting back to the topic of the video, is not the satellite networks. This is the risk for cell site landlords with 5G is if you are in a heavily populated urban area, such as New York, such as Long Island, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Atlanta, these areas, these NFL cities where they have rooftop cell sites, where you predominantly have rooftop cell sites, and these mature cell sites that are put up, 20, 25 years ago, that are paying, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8,000 a month, and they're out there. These really expensive sites, they're out there. These sites that have matured, those are the sites that are flashing red, that are at risk. So here at Tower Genius, Kevin Donahue and I have been saying now for years that those sites are, especially in the big cities like New York City, they're at risk of obsolescence. The vast majority of those sites are not going to be here. We don't think they're going to be here in 10 years. Okay. So the next question is, well, why would one of these lease buyout companies offer you, hundreds of thousands, six, seven figures for these sites? Well, the answer is, it's like a Wall Street casino. So they're taking these things, they're packaging and they're selling them off to, whoever, Bernie Madoff's cousin or somebody. So, and the musical chair game goes on and on until the music stops. So at the end of the day, you don't want to be sitting there holding the bag and left without a chair when that music stops. You want to be sitting in a chair. That means you want to either, collect the rent for as long as you can and enjoy it. If you don't, whatever. If the cell site goes away, you just have to make sure in your lease agreement that you have language that requires the carrier or the tenant to remove that equipment, right? So that's important. But if you want to, hedge that bet, then you trade it off into something that's less volatile, less risky of losing its value. Maybe you buy a self-storage facility with it, or you buy a strip mall or some other less risky commercial asset that you can do a 1031 exchange with. And I can't, again, not give you financial advice. You want to talk to a financial advisor about that, or a CPA and commercial realtor, and get guidance on doing a 1031 exchange. But a lot of people, when they go to cash out of these leases, they find a like-kind commercial property to dump the money into. So that's a strategy that landlords are more and more doing, especially baby boomers that are retiring and they want to secure that. So if you have a rural site, I wouldn't really be concerned about 5G. All these rural towers will have 4G and 5G antennas, and they will work in conjunction with the networks. That's not what's going to be a risk to you if you're a landlord. The risk is if you are an urban rooftop cell site landlord in a big city, and especially if you're paying, if you're getting rents that are in excess of like $4,500 a month. I'd say that's probably like the cutoff where it's really, higher risk. So, you have one or two things that you can do. You keep collecting the rent and just enjoy that monthly check or annual check that you get, or transfer that risk to somebody else. And remember, most of these buyout companies, they're not infrastructure people for the most part. They're bankers and Wall Street people, and they just they're not looking at what's going to happen in 4 or 5 years. Believe me, most of the people that call you, they are salespeople with zero wireless experience. So believe me when I tell you that the rooftop urban cell sites are at risk. So you need to figure out your game plan going forward. So that's all I got to say about that.